This is the World Innovators Podcast with your host, Donna Peterson.
I am so happy today. I am sitting down with my good friend, Amy Miller, who is the Director of Digital Engagement at Informa. Amy and I have known each other for over 15 years, and we have seen a lot of changes in marketing over the years. And some we'll laugh about today, but we'll also just dive into a lot of the different techniques we're seeing coming in 2021. But she works for Informa, and I just want to let everyone know, if they don't know about Informa, Informa's in 43 countries, and they have ownership of several different brands. And I'm going to quickly read you this list because I want to make sure I don't leave anyone out. Some of their brands that they own are CRC Press, Fan Expo, Institute of International Research, Lloyd's List, Penton, Rutledge, Taylor and Francis, and UBM. And they have across a variety of different industries. And so before we get started, my name is Donna Peterson, and this is the World Innovators Podcast, where I'm going to be sitting down with marketing executives to find out what they do to energize their marketing campaigns and how they energize themselves, because I think it is a direct reflection of everything we do in our lives. So glad to have you here with me today, Amy.
Thank you, Donna. I'm so excited to be here. And as you said, we're old hat at this now, and old hat and old friends, and moving on into new things.
Yes, we are. And like we said, we think we probably have known each other and been doing marketing since we were in diapers. So
absolutely.
Needless to say, we have seen some changes. I think when you and I first started working, it was just with postal lists at the time.
Yep, on Cheshire labels.
That's right. Oh, goodness gracious. I forgot about those. And, some of our audience may not even know what that is, so we won't go into that, what Cheshire labels is. But needless to say, we had labels and mag tapes. So
yep, absolutely.
Very interesting. So what have you seen over the years that has really inspired you, or you have seen to be quite creative in marketing?
Well, I mean, I think that we can all agree now that it's about digital, right? That years ago when you and I started, or not even that many years ago, there were more pieces of mail in your mailbox than there were emails in your inbox, right? And then we did a whole flip-flop, and now we're back here. And I think that that's great. I embrace digital. I think everybody embraces digital. But I think it's important to not remember our roots, because that sounds a little corny, but I think that the old is new again, right? That I think sometimes we need to start thinking about digital is everywhere. We are inundated by your email inbox, okay, what device am I looking at it on? Is it on my mobile? Is it on my iPad? Am I watching it at night? Whereas sometimes the old fashioned way is coming back into play. I'm not saying solely, but I think that sometimes that piece of mail in your mailbox is not a bad thing. It can reinforce the digital. And I've been talking to clients about, bring some of that old school back.
Yeah.
Who isn't, I'm sorry, but who isn't excited on your birthday to go open the mailbox and there's a birthday card that you can actually take out of the envelope and look at?
Well, I don't know if I get too excited on my birthdays anymore. Because the number keeps going up. So, if you told me the number would decrease, maybe I would get excited on my birthday.
I'm with you there. But right, like I think that, I think there's something to be said about holding that piece of paper in your hand again.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that digital isn't still the way to go or the way to engage people. But I think now being a little bit more creative and throwing a couple of those old school techniques back in are not a bad thing. And that, whether that includes something in your mailbox or, especially if you're a cataloger, a catalog mailer, who doesn't like to just sit down and flip through the catalog? Right. There's a different feel to it. You can almost disengage from digital and sit down and look at the catalog, the same as reading that birthday card.
Well, and also with a catalog, I find you end up buying something you really weren't set out to buy, because I know
Right, because you're not searching.
right, because if I go online, I'm searching for a specific thing. Let's say it's a turtleneck, because I love to ski. If I'm looking for a turtleneck, but if I'm looking at the LL Bean catalog and all of a sudden I see those warm merino wool gloves,
Right,
I might buy
exactly.
it. So same on the business side, but I agree. And there's not as much competition in the mailbox that there was years ago,
Agreed. And you can still engage people digitally, but using an old school technique like the mailbox, right? So you can throw out a digital campaign that says, check your mailbox. You remember when you used to see that on TV and you would, when we had 3 TV channels instead of, 80 or 600, but
I don't know I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not that old.
Well, I'm talking about our parents, right? Okay, that makes us all feel better. There you go. There you go. So, when it said, watch your mailbox, and who didn't want to watch the mailbox? What's coming in the mailbox? So you can combine these different techniques, the same way that you would do, you and I are all about nurture, right?
Yeah.
We are all about, gone are the days when you can send out one email and expect to get a 25% response rate. Engagement rate. It's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
I wish it was.
Yeah. I say that to people all the time. One-off promotions are not going to work anymore.
No.
I'll stand behind, marketing and digital and direct, but it's not one-off. It's like what you said before. It's a nurturing.
Yeah. You have to, you woo them, right? It's you don't get married on the first date.
No.
Right. So the same way, you don't get married on the first date where you're not going to necessarily buy. You'll get a couple one-offs. You'll of course get some engagement. You may even get some purchasers, but you are not going to build reputation. You're not going to build brand. You're not going to build leads. Any KPIs that you're interested in, you're not going to maximize with a one-off campaign.
Right.
And that's why working with someone like you or pulling in, some data that we like to consider very top in the industry, at Informa and nurturing that data. We'll help you build campaigns. You're all about helping a client build campaigns, changing up the creative, changing up the from line, adding banner advertising to it, anything so that you can continue to reinforce and nurture and continue to date, and you can speed date, you can absolutely speed date if you've got a product that's got a really short lead time.
Yeah.
Or you can go for a long engagement, either one, but it's not about one-off anymore. It's all about, the long term.
I agree with that. And, over the years, I have used the Informa lists a lot, and you've helped us put together some nice packages for clients, even if it's like a 3-time blast. Because like you said, then you hit them 3 times. And the first time, usually people get an email, they'll look at it, they'll think, but they don't react. They don't take an action. And maybe the second time, maybe they'll click through, but again, they won't fill out the form or, register. And it's that third time that usually gets them to make that decision to move forward that I found to be very effective.
Yeah, no, I do too. I agree with you. And I think the amount of times that you and I have looked at the analytics from a campaign and the third one has the highest click-through rate, and you're thinking, how is this possible?
Yeah.
Right. It's because you've also earned their trust. We all know that out there are also sadly loads and loads of scam and phishing and you know what? Those are one-offs.
Yes.
So to not be included in that category, I think you have to prove prove yourself. You have to prove that you're going to be around the next week, the next day, the next month for that next email or that next digital engagement proposition, right? Whether it's a banner or another email or whatever it is, even if it is that postcard in the mailbox.
Right. It gives your company more validity.
It's proof. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. It gives you proof. And then if they get a postal piece, I have to tell you, when a person gets a postal piece, that really gives your company validation, because everyone knows how much it costs to do a postal piece. You got your printing and the postage and everything that's involved with that. And if a company has spent that much money in doing it, plus it has to have a return address on it, you have to know where the people are actually sitting. And so it does help, reinforce the brand. And I have to tell you, that is something in 2021 I have noticed, and we're going to get on that, what trends you saw. But I think more companies are starting to understand how important brand is.
Right.
Because for a while I would go in, I'd have client meetings and they say, oh, well, Donna, we only had this many people who converted to sales. And I'd say, well, but you got a lot of branding. And they're like,
Right.
well, I don't care about branding. It doesn't add to the bottom line. And I'm like, but it does,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it may not add to the bottom line right then and there, but it
Right.
will down the road if you are going after the right audience.
Correct.
And
Correct. I agree
that's
with you.
what using a file like Informa's does, is because you and I know we can go into Bioprocess International and I can select chief scientists in a specific area who do a specific technique.
Right.
And,
Right.
and doing that, then we know we're reaching exactly the people we need to do.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And it's about, part of that, as you and I both know, is how the file is sourced, right?
Yeah.
There are people who claim to have that chief scientific officer, at XYZ, specific technique. But where did it come from? Whereas, and we're not the only company, certainly, but, at Informa, the data that I rent is the data that our marketers use. It is the data that is used to fill up our rooms, Lord willing, with COVID, that, we're back to face-to-face conferences, as soon as possible. But that's what we use to fill up those rooms. That's what we use for our controlled search publications. Or we have a whole load of actual subscription-based publications where, the person is paying $3,000 to get script or to get the pink sheet. They're not going to make up their job title. They're not going to make up their line of business. It's not compiled. It's not, built by, surfing around the internet and throwing, names that you see on LinkedIn.
Or people signing up for free newsletters. That's not what you've got there. Yes. Well, what makes Informa such an attractive source is because you are in so many different countries across so many different verticals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there aren't as many, publishing or conference companies that are strong worldwide. They'll say they have worldwide addresses, but when you go to look, it might be 50% US and then, 30% UK, and then the rest is 20% is the rest of the world, where your list, I know because you have offices all over the world and in Dubai and Brazil, and, you have a lot of records there. Yep, you have a lot of records there. So with the Informa list that you have right now, what seem to be your hot lists at Informa? Like, what are you renting the most of?
Well, it's hard to say. I think right now, and I think we all know why, is pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
Let's face it, sadly, here we are in the middle of a, pharmaceutical, I guess the pharmaceutical part's not a nightmare, but we all know that we're, hopefully what is considered almost the tail end of a global healthcare crisis.
Right.
So, there's all different kinds of pharmaceutical emails, some related to COVID, some not, but I think all kind of in and around that pharmaceutical space, and nicely, a good number of them are about how we can help, right? Like how can, how are different companies counteracting COVID, or, what are we doing to help with this, or help with, lockdown, or et cetera. But throwing that whole piece, which I wish we all could, but throwing that whole piece out of the equation, I think the other piece that right now is very hot is manufacturing.
Yes.
Is I think that, manufacturing, and I know that that's a super broad term, and we even have, a varying number of lists within the manufacturing market. But I think that that's probably a little bit because of COVID as well. How are we moving goods from place to place?
Right.
How are we shipping? What are the logistics? How are manufacturing processes changing with new, sanitary guidelines and, all different kinds of things. But we also, as you know, Donna, we have this whole new data set of Informa Markets, which is one of our markets, or one of our divisions that's been around forever, the global exhibition market. But to date, up until about last December, their lists weren't on the market. It was not a business stream that they as a team wanted to be in, but now it is. So, adding that to our portfolio adds an awful lot of manufacturing titles, engineering titles, more pharmaceutical titles.
Plus it's fresh data.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fresh data if no one else has been using the data. And like
Correct.
one of the things that you said before that I need to reinforce is because Informa holds the data in-house.
Yep.
And your own organization is using the data, that data is cleaned daily, probably hourly, because you want to make sure that internally you're not using bad data. And that's something people have to be aware of, because you could get XYZ list over here, but if it's not held in-house, there's no way to be updated as quickly as yours.
Right. Correct. Most of the Informa lists, are probably a good 90% of them, we don't get updates. It is not, the list management type of update scenario where you get a monthly or a quarterly update.
Right.
We're online. We are literally, my staff and I are online with the same data that the marketer sitting in Singapore is going to be, sending out a new conference invite that next day. We're utilizing that same data. So, it's absolutely, and we can also add engagement flags.
Yep.
So that we know, when these people have been engaged and that kind of thing. So it's always been.
When people go to place orders, I think I do that on my orders. I'll write most engaged records.
Absolutely.
So that we're getting people who are actively engaged in that specific target area that we're in, which again, then we know they're really interested, because especially this year, people have changed companies or maybe have changed roles within the company. And if they're not engaging with certain emails, they're not interested. So that gets interesting. Now, tell me about what does Informa do to stay compliant?
We have actually, it would almost actually scare you. We have a full compliant team. Not only does each brand, right? So, and if you look at Informa, there's probably, the Informa markets that I was just talking about, they, for instance, have 15 different brands.
Oh my
so
goodness.
By brands, I mean, top level vertical within that market. There are compliance people within each one of those. And then we have a global compliance and user care team. So the global compliance team takes care of making sure we're compliant across all the different regions and countries. Because like you said, we're in, 50, 60 countries worldwide, each one of them having, are you can spam? Are you Castle? Are you GDPR? There's so many of them.
Yeah.
Then we also have a user care team that whenever an email is sent out, if someone does have a question, unfortunately, sometimes a complaint, or really even just wants to know where their details came from and how they were added to that mailing, we have a whole team that helps and walks people through that, looks up their credentials, takes care of answering any of their questions, and then opts them out if that's what they choose to. But honestly, a good number of the time they choose not to, because they really didn't want to opt out. They just wanted to make sure that we were legitimate in emailing them.
Right. Well, you and I ran into that issue, I guess, what was it, about 2 years ago, where it was a postal piece in the UK where a gentleman complained and said he never opted into getting, any kind of correspondence. Don't we know GDPR? And after I went back to you, you were able to dig up, and the person had opted in 3 different times to getting messages, via digital or direct. And so because of your back end, your history information, we were able to go back to him right away and say, yes, you did.
Right. And the nice thing is, most of the time, and I know, we all know it's just like a personality thing within the whole world, I guess, right? But most of the time, they really do just want to know. And once you've told them, even if they were irritated to begin with, I've had almost every single person come back and say, oh, right, you're right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I forgot that I opted in. And we recognize and Informa that we have so many brands. If you opt in, for instance, to, like you said, Bioprocess International, and then you receive, an email from a pharmaceutical client, you may not make the connection. When it says Informa has brought you, this email is brought to you by Informa. And we get that. We get that they don't know, oh, right, I opted into Bioprocess and, I didn't realize that it was Informa.
I had something happen this morning where I said to the client, it's Informa. And then I said in the things, Plastics Today. And she came back to me, she goes, well, no, I just want Plastics Today. And I'm like, well, Informa owns Plastics Today. So you're right. You do have to educate them sometimes that the brands are all under that Informa umbrella.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so now going into 2000 or going into, I can't believe here we are March, but I guess we're more
I
than
know.
going into, I guess we're in it in
I know.
2021. What do you see as the biggest trends finishing up this year?
You know what? Well, I'm going to tell you what I think I see and what I'd like to see. So what I think I see is a lot of lead gen, which, we have an entire lead gen team that does a phenomenal job, like does an absolutely phenomenal job. And I think when the product is right, when the company is right, and that's what their KPI is, I think lead gen is the most viable option for a lot of companies.
Right.
But what I think sometimes gets missed is the fact that it's not all about the lead. It's like you and I were talking about, and it was funny when I was, prepping to talk to Donna Peterson, and make sure that I was up to snuff on all my, on all my direct marketing and digital engagement. I started thinking really randomly about sporting events and, Coca-Cola, or you name it, you pick any big company, right?
Yeah.
When you look around at a sporting event and you see all the signage and you see the placards and you see the names of the stadiums and you see all the branding that happens when it comes to a sporting event, they're not out there for the lead.
No.
Right? They're not Coca-Cola or, Toyota or, any other large name that you can think of. They recognize the huge, huge benefit of a brand, right? Of getting their name out there. And that's not to say that they don't do lead gen campaigns, because I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
Everybody needs leads, right? That we're all in sales. We're a for-profit industry, and, we need to make a profit. And to make a profit, you need a lead.
Right.
But I think that sometimes what gets skipped or missed is the branding, the nurturing, the awareness, Donna, that was such a good conversation. I'm kind of thirsty now. What am I going to go have to drink? You know what?
Well, I wish I had a can of Coca-Cola right here. That would just have been, yes.
I do too, and I don't. I use this one just so that I had something pretty for the camera. But, that's what happens, right?
Yeah,
and,
it does.
All of us who can remember back to our marketing 101 or 201, in college, and that's what they tell you, right? It's all about that. I hate to use the word subliminal because then it makes it sound a little creepy, but it is, right?
Well, it is. Remember all those songs, all the jingles when we were younger, as soon as you heard it, like, okay, McDonald's, 2 all beef patty, special sauce. Like I could do that song over and over. And
absolutely,
if I ate like that still, I would go grab a, Big Mac, but
correct.
There's jingles we still remember, and you're right. It sticks in your mind. And then if you do get to that point, you're going to go buy that product.
Right.
And I agree.
So I think it's a combination.
Yeah.
And I think we need to marry the two.
Right. And I think 2021 is about the relationship.
Agreed.
And then, like you said, the only way to have the relationship is to have good branding, but then also educate. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do the podcast, as I mentioned to you, is I have these great discussions with vendors like you, and I want to go out and share it, because people have to realize there really is a company like Informa. I know you can look it up on Google and you could see there's a company like Informa, but that, the lists are held in-house. You know that they're all compliant. And like you said, that one office has 15 different ways that they're making sure that all the data is compliant. And that's why we're here. So I agree with you that 2021 is going to be about, the brand, nurturing. And that being said, now what kind of packages, have you done any really good packages lately that have had unbelievable responses?
You know what, honestly, you and I do a lot of good packages. And I say that because I really like the combination of HTML and text. There are some people who engage with an HTML, and there are some people who engage more with a text. And I think by combining those within the nurturing, the multiple hitting, the multiple engagement sends, multi-touch sends, I think that's good. And we also have that product, the audience extension product,
yes, yeah,
which is the banner serving product, which is different from many banner serving products because it's not married to a site. It's married to the person. And there are something to be said. I know I started off the beginning and said, I'd like to get it in my mailbox. Well, the other thing is we are all digital. And
Yes.
when we turn the laptop off and we sit down to watch Netflix,
Yeah.
we're usually sitting there with a device, right? And we usually all have our phone or our iPad or whatever. An audience extension is one of those products that will hit that device even on your off time.
Right.
And it's subtle and it's not in your face and it's not, but it allows you to bring that program or bring that campaign into other aspects outside of that work laptop that just offers that reinforcement.
Right.
And I think that when you are a company who can fully embrace the fact that it's not a one-off and you may need a month or a 2-month campaign, and then you can add the different product sets into it, whether it's email and banners, email and postal, anything. Yeah. That's not just one thing. The whole multi-touch, multi-month, I think that's when we're all going to win. And, having said that about the leads, throw leads in there as well. There's no reason not to get the leads, but I think that sometimes too much emphasis is on just the lead and not the branding. The lead is all about right now. Read this white paper and I'm now a lead. Right. Well, what happens 6 months from now when I'm thinking about how thirsty I am? I need to have that brand recognition, right? That brand awareness that's going to pull Coca-Cola back from the recesses.
You're making me very thirsty.
Sorry.
Between that and the water in your background, I'm like,
right. Right. Well, it's Donna. You know what? When we're done with this, right, you and I can have a rum and Coke, right? Because it'll fit right in with our
speech about Coca-Cola.
That's right. But I think it's just, expanding your vision.
Right. But what is interesting about your audience extension program, and tell me if I'm wrong, I think I've got this right, is we can pull a specific list from one of your Informa entities. So let's say Bioprocess International, let's go back there. We can pull a specific audience and then we can make sure that the banners are served up in front of the same audience.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%.
So that's key, because some people might rent a list over here and then they'll go do banners and they'll put in a targeted audience, but you don't know specifically if, let's say, Tom Jones is getting the email list. Now Tom Jones is going to see the banner.
Correct.
And I think when you can do it through an entity like yourself, like Informa, where you can do the list and then make sure the banner's going up in front of the same people.
Correct.
That's where it becomes very effective.
Yeah. And it's all about the frequency, right?
Right.
The nurturing boils down to frequency. Yep. And, and I think clients are right. And you and I have said that doesn't mean somebody wants 15 emails.
Right.
But to get 3 emails and see 5 or 6 banners over the course of a month continues to reinforce that whole brand awareness.
Right. Or they get the first email or the second one and they don't respond, but they wanted to, but they were just too busy that day. And I think sometimes the banner, like you said, is kind of a reminder, like, oh yeah, you know what? I really wanted to sign up for that executive education program or that auction. I better go in and do it. And so now with the banners, have you seen that a frequency works best for them? I know sometimes you and I will do it around my business auction clients, which they don't have much time to promote. But let's say you're an executive education program or something else where you've got more time to promote. What type of frequency do you see best with that?
We typically fall within a 15 time per month frequency. So if you break that out about over a month, it's on average, because remember you have to hit the right site that had inventory, but not to get into the technical nitty gritty. It's about 1 banner every other day. Okay. So what you want to do, in my opinion, is, we've all also to pick a retail site, and, I'm on a podcast. I don't want to be derogatory against any particular retail site, but pick a retail site and you go on to look for a pair of shoes.
Right.
And then those shoes follow you every single place you go for the whole rest of the month, right? But it's without thought, right?
Yes.
They don't know if you bought the shoes. They don't know if the shoes were for you. They don't know if you saw the shoes, hated them, didn't buy them, and left the site. But there are the shoes over and over and over and over. Whereas this happens because you pick a persona that should have an interest in your product. It is the persona that you're targeting with the demographics that fit the profile of your target market.
Right.
And then they see that, and they don't see it to a point where it's Big Brother and you're going, oh, for heaven's sake, stop.
Yeah.
They're seeing it at a frequency that is a reminder and an engagement, but not scary.
Yeah. But now,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so that would be over 1 month. Do you see that after 6 months, the banners really build traction, or is there a point where you say, oh, wow, okay, here's banners. Yes, we're getting some branding, but we see, boom, here that people really start to respond?
At the 2 to 3 month range is where I really think you start to see an impact on the brand awareness, that the click-through rates start to really go up. And that's when I suggest that a client, if they are willing to put in the 6 month, for instance, that's when you swap the banners out. As you hit that 2 to 3 month period, what we can do is keep the same list and the same targeting and swap it out for a different banner.
Okay.
So that it kind of changes it up.
Right.
Oh, I saw that banner already. Oh, wow, look at that banner. That's offering me something different. Or that's a different way to look at it. Or, that kind of thing.
That's what I was going to ask.
We had some go a whole year.
Wow.
We've literally had some financial companies, some insurance companies, and some pharmaceutical companies run an audience extension campaign to the same demographics for a whole year and swap the banners out every 2 to 3 months.
Okay. And each time they're swapping it out, they're changing the offer.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And
the landing page, or, just something about it that
gives it a different look.
People. Yeah.
Okay. Now, because I had a company recently and they're promoting a webinar and they didn't really get a good response. And I said, well, maybe you needed to do a little bit of educating first before you hit them with the webinar. Have you found that to work that way on your list?
Yes. We actually, and we have an internal team that runs webinars for clients as well.
Oh, good.
We're very well versed in running webinars. It does have to be within our platform. Promote using our third-party list, using list rental. But yeah, I think the key to webinars is hitting the market far enough out. Go too far, nobody wants to register that.
Right.
But we've enticed with a white paper. We've, done different types of things to try to intrigue people before we get to that webinar. And the other thing is to not to get discouraged isn't necessarily the right word, but if you on demand post web, the reason it has to stop when the webinar stops. You can then continue the promotion for 2 to 3 months with the on demand,
right?
With the same, with the same outcome, with getting the same leads if that's what you wanted to get, or whatever your KPI is.
Yeah, and that's no extra work. Right. And there's no extra work on the company because it's all done. So it's basically sitting out there just making them money, which is
exactly.
Or just getting them the lead. It doesn't always make them money, but get them the lead. So it's a great way to do it. Well, that sounds interesting. And I, hope I can get some clients to, definitely try it out for a more longer period of time. But I know for the short time, it's been working quite well. But I don't want to hold you too long. And what my last question is. My last question is, in order to energize your marketing, I feel you also have to energize yourself. I'm big into health and fitness. So I want to know, what does Amy Miller do to energize herself and keep your head ready to be innovative?
Well, when I can't be where my background is, which would absolutely be, a jog on the beach would be 100% of what I would pick.
Then I'm coming with you.
Absolutely. But we both know that unfortunately that's not always viable.
But the Caymans.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Caymans someday. That's our dream.
Absolutely. But when I can't do that, I just, at least outside in nature, it can be walk, it can be run, it can be with, as I've told you, we had the benefit, I guess I will say, of fostering quite a few puppies currently, and just taking them out, for a walk. But I think everybody needs to energize. You need to step away, and when I step away, the phone is not with me. The iPad is not with me unless it's for music.
Right.
It really, you cannot de-stress and energize and take a walk with your phone. you can't.
No.
So I'm all about outside, as you know, Donna, we've relocated, from the Northeast to, more south.
Right.
And it was for just that,
Yeah.
to give me more nice days to be outside, and that's what I enjoy.
Yeah.
That's what I enjoy, is being outside. But
Good.
perfect would be Cayman. So
yeah, perfect. Well, that's our dream, right? The Cayman Islands, talking about marketing. And maybe someday we'll do this podcast. We'll be sitting together, and that will be our actual
absolutely. And any client who wants to is more than welcome to come join us. We'd be happy to have a big old marketing party, in the Cayman Islands.
Hey, I think you're onto something. I think maybe we should have a marketing conference in the Caymans.
Works for me.
Hey, I think it might work for everybody. So
absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I really found it informative, even for myself. And I hope everyone who's listening in found out a little bit more about Informa, and will definitely reach out to get some counts.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'm here whenever you need me. So all they have to do is knock on your door, and you can come to me, and we'll build whatever we need to build.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the World Innovators Podcast. For more information about today's topic, email us at dpeterson@worldinnovators.com or call 860-210-8088. And please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode.